The dust from the trade deadline has finally settled, so it's time to break down and grade the biggest moves. Before we dive in, it's worth noting that these grades are super subjective and don't necessarily factor prospects into the equation as much as traditional analyses, mostly because prospects are, at their core, unknown commodities at the major league level, and nobody really knows how they'll pan out, especially given all the uncertainties in life. These trades are also going to be graded from the perspective of the teams that acquired the big-time major league talent. Now, these aren't all of the moves made at the deadline, but they're certainly ones to watch. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to make the biggest impact on their new team and who's going to benefit the most from a new player, or three. The Orioles made the first notable trade to kick off the deadline season when they acquired Shintaro Fujinami from the A's. While Fujinami hasn't had the best season, his raw stuff will play in any postseason series, and the Orioles are really emerging as a true powerhouse in the AL once again. And they continue to try and cement that status by acquiring Jack Flaherty from the Cardinals. For those who don't know me, I'm a big Jack Flaherty guy. His breakout campaign in 2019 was one of the more impressive seasons by a young pitcher in the last few years, and we all thought that he was going to turn out to be a superstar. But injuries have put a huge dent in his career progression, and he just doesn't quite look the same. But with a young, dynamic core of hitters and a lethal 1-2 punch at the back end of the bullpen, the Orioles needed an impact starter to help lead the rotation, and Flaherty gives them just that. The Angels made a few moves at the deadline, and also a non-deal. More on Ohtani in a second. But with the acquisitions of Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez, the Angels have told the rest of the league that they're going for it. But did they get the right pieces? Giolito continues to be a head-scratcher, with a 3.85 ERA but a 4.56 FIP, seemingly a far cry from his 2019 season, where he posted a 5.2 FWAR, a 3.41 ERA, and a 3.43 FIP in 29 starts. So the potential is certainly there, but the production has lacked any sort of consistency. If they're serious about contending in the American League this year and not just getting to the postseason, the Angels need more than a rental in Giolito and a solid but not quite elite reliever in Lopez. However, Lopez does possess some nasty stuff, with a routinely triple-digit fastball. Still, it's a positive move for the Angels, so credit is due. And they followed that up by adding CJ Cron and Randall Grichuk, which seems like a good move on the surface, but neither guy has been a true impact bat this season. With Trout due back in a couple weeks, the Angels will really need to get hot to justify these moves. They definitely have the pieces, but will they actually do it? For much of the deadline, it looked as though Ohtani might be dealt by the Angels. But the unthinkable didn't end up happening, and Ohtani is staying put. Though the Angels are just barely on the outside looking in, they'll need to position themselves as the best option for Ohtani if they're to keep their prized megastar in Angels colors for the foreseeable future. Ohtani will not have a higher return on his market value than he does right now, and the Angels don't have a truly realistic chance to compete for anything beyond winning a road game in the Wild Card Series. For me, this move, or lack thereof, is a huge step backwards for the Angels, who continue to baffle baseball fans around the world. Yes, indeed, the Mets have begun trading their veteran aces. The Mets will get Ronald Acuna Jr.'s younger brother Luis Angel, and the Rangers will get Scherzer and a good bit of Scherzer's contract paid for by the Mets. This deal is solid on both sides. The Mets are freeing up space under the luxury tax for the offseason and getting a young, talented prospect, and the Rangers are getting a proven superstar pitcher who makes them the prohibitive favorites to win the AL, not just the West, in 2023. Texas also acquiring Jordan Montgomery is another clear indication that the Rangers mean business in 2023. Not that it was a secret before, but the Rangers getting another arm to bolster the rotation is particularly huge given Eovaldi's most recent trip to the IL. Montgomery isn't a guy who will make a huge difference in a postseason series, but he gives you innings in a time of year where every game is crucial and players are starting to feel the effects of a 162-game season. In my trade deadline preview, I did say the Astros were going to do something to make themselves better, and they did. But they aren't just a little bit better. They got a lot better by trading for Justin Verlander. And like the Rangers deal for Scherzer, this one could put the Astros ahead of their in-state rivals. Verlander is who he is. The resume speaks for itself. His start to the year wasn't stellar by any means, but he's pitched much better as of late and is the kind of pitcher, even at age 40, who can change the dynamic of a pennant race. He's done it his whole career, and there's no reason to think he's about to stop. This was just news to me until recently, but the Astros also traded for Kendall Graveman. Recently with Houston in 2021, Graveman was a big part of the Astros' pen down the stretch and into the postseason that year, and figures to be a factor once more this year. The Dodgers are getting the band back together, or so it would seem. LA is bringing Kike Hernandez and Joe Kelly back to Southern California while also acquiring Lance Lynn and Ahmed Rosario. Heading out the door for the Dodgers are Noah Syndergaard, Trace Thompson, and a few other prospects. Honestly, I'm not sure why the Dodgers felt the need to acquire Rosario and Lance Lynn, but Kike Hernandez and Joe Kelly are cult heroes in LA given their contributions to the 2020 World Series champs. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. They know exactly what they're doing. For a minimal cost of Trace Thompson, who has struggled mightily this year between the bigs and AAA, Noah Syndergaard, who has also struggled, and a few prospects, these deals aren't a bad idea for the Dodgers. Low risk, potentially medium reward. Just what you'd expect from the Dodgers. The Diamondbacks, still one of the big surprises of 2023, continue to remain in the hunt for a playoff spot. But the bullpen is one of their weaker spots, so they acquired Mariners closer Paul Sewald. This is another case of a team doing exactly what they needed to do at the deadline. Now we'll have to wait and see if it pays off. Sewald doesn't have the prototypical stuff of a closer, but he's effective and gets results, which is all that matters when the calendar hits September and October. I've talked about the Marlins being one of the surprises of the 2023 season so far, keeping pace in the NL wildcard despite preseason projections not agreeing with their current success. So they decided to go get an experienced closer in David Robertson. He has a 2.05 ERA with 14 saves on the year, adding a big piece to the Marlins bullpen. But the Fish weren't going to settle for that, so they flipped Dylan Floro for Jorge Lopez of the Twins. Lopez is yet another reliever with closing experience, and although he hasn't been all that effective this year, he can certainly help the Marlins bullpen. Miami is among the major league's best in one-run games. Lopez and Robertson make them much more dangerous. The Blue Jays acquired Jordan Hicks for a couple minor league prospects, and this has the potential to be a really good deal. Still, with Hicks' injury history and spotty performances this year, it's not quite a great trade yet. But count out this trade for a guy with absolutely silly stuff at your own risk. Hicks touches 103, sometimes 104, and should provide cover for the Blue Jays while Jordan Romano recovers from lower back inflammation. The trade for Paul DeJong is a bit more on the speculative side, but given what he showed in the past, it was worth at least a flyer on the middle infielder. Right before the deadline, I made a video on why Cody Bellinger has been the most confusing player in baseball. The biggest enigma, if you will. And his red-hot July, worthy of Player of the Month honors in the NL, has the Cubs positioned for a real run at a playoff spot. So the Cubs went out and bolstered their lineup with the acquisition of Jeimer Candelario. While he's having a decent season with 16 homers and an .823 OPS, I'm not so sure the Cubs really needed another bat. Pitching seems to be their more pressing need, especially with Stroman heading to the IL with a hip problem. Still, not a bad pickup. If you're the Padres and needed veteran leadership, you're about to get it. Rich Hill, one of the oldest players in baseball, continues to be more than serviceable. Ji-Man Choi has experience in the biggest games in baseball, and Scott Barlow has the stuff of a back-end bullpen guy. These three guys may not be world beaters on their own, but put together with the current core of Padres, and you've got a sneaky good trade deadline. I usually try to be fairly reasonable about the Braves, given that I am a Braves fan. But the acquisitions of Pierce Johnson and Taylor Hearn just didn't do much for me. And when the Braves then flipped Hearn for Nicky Lopez, the prevailing feeling continued to be meh. Still, great teams have depth at every position, and Lopez adds just that to the Braves. Johnson is the unknown quantity, but his K rate stands among the top of baseball, so it remains to be seen if they can get him back to his best, when he struck out just under 12 batters per 9 innings. However, the Braves adding another reliever with closing experience, in the playoffs no less, in Brad Hand, cannot fly under the radar. But whether or not a strong bullpen can make up for a weaker rotation outside of Fried and Strider remains to be seen. Well folks, that's all for this one. Let me know what you thought of the trade deadline in the comments section, and be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.